Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to Saba and Mahjabin for inviting me to undertake this presentation. And thank you for your introductions as well. It's a real pleasure to meet you all, although it's virtual. I understand that you're 11:30 there. It's about 6:42 here in the morning, and so I'm not long up. So bear with me as I drink my coffee and embrace the day. But I'm delighted to start the day with having the opportunity to speak with you all. And it's so interesting to see the ecosystem across Pakistan and Lahore. Haven't had the opportunity to visit there, but I'm hoping to come over soon. A number of my colleagues from the university have visited and certainly had a tour around the Lum Centre. But also really interesting to see the LCE idea launch, which I think you currently have open for applications. Which is interesting because we've just closed our accelerator program. We've been running that accelerator program for 8 years now, and we had 130 applications in this accelerator program. So we're just going through judging of those, and we'll take 12 on our accelerator program starting in January. So let me share my screen and I can tell you a little bit more about there we go. If I do my presenter view, there we go. So you should be able to see a screen that says designing inclusive and sector specific incubation modules, insights from Robert Gordon University. And it's really a pleasure to be here to talk about something that sits right at the heart of what we do at the university, which is entrepreneurship. And I think when most people hear the word entrepreneurship, and when we think about the entrepreneurial role models that we have across the globe, they often picture tech startups, investment rounds, Series A, Series B, pitching competitions. But at RGU, what we've tried to do over the past 5-6 years is to see entrepreneurship as something a lot broader, a lot more kind of human, about unlocking the potential of students and staff across the university, but increasingly across the region in places and in the ideas that they have. And today, talking to Saba and Mahjabin, we wanted to share with you some of the other areas that we're focusing on, significant areas around female entrepreneurship, creative entrepreneurship, and food and drink entrepreneurship, but also do a deep dive into why these kind of matter to Scotland and Scotland's economy and the social and cultural fabric of the society across Scotland and the UK. Let me tell you a little bit about Robert Gordon University, because many people may not have heard of Robert Gordon University. It's based in Scotland. I don't know if any of you have been to Scotland. I moved up to Scotland 30 years ago, and it is beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Lots of countryside. The people here are very friendly, similar to Pakistan. Very warm people. Not warm weather. It does get cold in the winter. Lots of snow. But the people and the countryside and the beauty of the architecture and the cities, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Stirling, is absolutely stunning. Lots of history around it. Robert Gordon University is based in Aberdeen, and that is in the northeast of Scotland, and it has a harbour, so it's on the coast. We have a student population of around about 18,000 students studying both on campus. We have a beautiful campus next to the river, and many study online, and we have around 300 courses as well. And I guess being in Aberdeen, for many years, we've been known as the oil and gas capital of Europe. And so historically, a lot of our programs have been connected to the oil and gas industry. But I think increasingly we're seeing energy transition. So we're doing a lot more renewable energy activity. And one of the strengths of Robert Gordon University is our connection to industry. 97% graduate employability, which is one of the best across the UK. And we rank first for employability, third in the UK for the study. And our graduate employment rates are very high. And so a lot of the reason why students come to Robert Gordon University is because they're almost guaranteed a job within 6 months of graduating. And the reason for that is because we have very close ties with industry, and we have work integrated programs as well. But not only that, we talk about RGU being Scotland's entrepreneurial university. So as well as going into jobs, careers with corporate organizations, they're also entrepreneurial. They're also starting their own businesses as well. And the Scottish Entrepreneurial University isn't just a kind of slogan that we put out there. It's something that we live through our teaching, our research, and our engagement with the communities. And we've been shortlisted twice in the past 5. We haven't won it yet, but in 2020 and 2022, the university was shortlisted for the Outstanding Entrepreneurial University of the Year, which is in the UK is like the Oscars for universities, and that's across the whole of the UK. And we've won a number of different awards for the programs that we've been delivering, particularly the Women in Business program, which is about female entrepreneurship, because we were one of the first across the UK to really embrace the opportunities that female entrepreneurship affords us and really double down on that demographic. And we've invested in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation group that supported this ecosystem for people to take ideas from concept to impact. But those models are very inclusive, they're very regional, and they're very practical. And they're practical because the team that we've built are entrepreneurs themselves. So this isn't an academic exercise. The academic side of entrepreneurship sits in our business school. The practical side of entrepreneurship sits under the governance of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation group, of which I'm the head of. But we have a small team, 6 of us, that are really there to foster and stimulate a vibrant culture of enterprise amongst all our communities, our students, our staff, and our graduates. And we were created in 2018, so we're in our 7th year now. And over that period, we've run a number of programs, which I'm going to share some of that with you today. But the flagship program has been the Accelerator program, and that's our startup program for graduate students and entrepreneurs. And over those 7 years, we've created 200 startups across all sectors. So we are sector agnostic. If you are a startup that wants to start something, it needs to be innovative. But if you're coming from Grace School of Arts, or you're coming from architecture, engineering, we have a health school. So if you have a health startup as well, so across all sectors, and that diversity brings a real richness to our accelerator programs. A little bit about me. So I've been working at the university now for 15 years. And in that time, I've had a number of jobs, but the last 8 years, I've been really driving entrepreneurship across the university. I am an entrepreneur. I've had a couple of businesses before. My first business I started in 2000. It was a corporate catering company in Edinburgh. We had 20 staff. We were turning over £300,000. And the story about that is we went bust. So after 3 years, it just became too difficult because Pret a Manger and O'Brien's and Starbucks and Costa Coffee were opening up, and it was just becoming very difficult to compete. And you need deep pockets if you're going to be able to compete. And so I learned a lot from that experience. I learned the good stuff of creating a brand and employing people and dealing with suppliers. But then I also learned a lot about finance and about the challenges that people have in business. And so I kind of took all of that, started another business which was slightly more successful, a digital media business, and then latterly in my career, I become a business advisor. Supporting young people primarily to start their businesses, taking that wealth of lived experience to support them in that. So let me just take you on. And the other thing is I did a TEDx. So just towards the end of COVID in 2022, I had the opportunity in Aberdeen to do a TED talk. And feel free to go and watch that if you just put in TED Talk Chris Moule. It's around recombinant innovation. And recombinant innovation is where you have two things, you put them together to create something new, basically. And the reason that there is a piece of luggage, old luggage, in this talk is that I talk about, I tell a story of my grandfather and his suitcase and how suitcases have been around for hundreds of years. Wheels have been around probably for thousands, maybe 10,000 of years. Somebody decided to put a wheel on a suitcase to create wheeled luggage, and we created a new product. And I talk about the environments that we need to create to stimulate and foster that recombinant innovation. So you feel free to go and watch that. And I would also encourage you to link in with me. Connect me on LinkedIn. Chris Moule, Head of Innovation Entrepreneurship, Robert Gordon University. Be delighted to connect with you all. I think one of you did it earlier today, which is fantastic. So yeah, happy to connect with you on there as much as possible. So let me do a deep dive into 3 areas that we've been focusing on, because I think when I spoke to Saba before, I think many centers of entrepreneurship around the world undertake a number of different kind of accelerator programs and pitching competitions and things like that. But I think what would be really interesting for this cohort, and as a TEDx speaker, you would need to think about the audience, the gift you give to your audience, is those slightly more niche areas. How do you focus? How do you make our entrepreneurial programs more inclusive and place-based? And that's something that we've been doing and learning about. So, you know, we've done a number of iterations of this, but we're learning as we go. And those 3 are around female entrepreneurship, so women in business, and tell you a little bit of the nuances around that. Then there's, I want to talk to you about creative entrepreneurship. So this is entrepreneurial programs aimed specifically at the creative industries. And then one around food and drink entrepreneurship, because as we diversify away from oil and gas, food and drink and tourism are becoming a significant sector in Aberdeen and the north of Scotland as well. And we have a great heritage and cultural heritage around food, drink, and tourism. I thought I'd start this by showing you a video that we made around the Women in Business program. Now, when I did this earlier, the audio wasn't quite matching to the video. So apologies for that if that happens again, but I think you'll get the gist. It's not a long video, but I think you'll get the gist. These are some of the participants talking about their experience of the Female Entrepreneurship Program.
That creativity that comes from being a mom, that logistic that you have from being a mom, is really good and applicable to the business area. But we don't have that. We oversee that.
It's important to have programs like Women in Business because it's really shaped around women with children who are mothers. They have lots of responsibilities, childcare, family, and I think it's important to provide people support in a way that's accessible to them. We have designed Women in Business to support women in the best way possible and to show them the skills they have can very much be useful for running a business.
Hi, my name's Pippa. I've lived in Scotland since I was 2 years old. I have a son called Travis who is 8 years old. I work as a primary teacher and I'm also an entrepreneur with my new business, Pips Club. Becoming a mum was definitely a brand new challenge for me. It was really different. It was quite funny, you know, because I thought, oh, you know, I can have a whole class full of children, sometimes over 30. So having one baby, surely that won't be too hard. And I was quite surprised to find out how much work one baby is, but it was still a really lovely experience. After becoming a mum, the biggest challenge I faced was trying to juggle all of the different roles. So I wanted to be a good mum and I wanted to be a good teacher. I also wanted to help Travis learn sign language. To be honest, I didn't ever think starting my own business was a possibility, just because I've always been a teacher and that's the only thing that I ever knew.
I'm Leticia Gaidon Bedford. I'm a portrait photographer. I'm a mom. My daughter is 12 years old. My business is about empowering women through photography and men as well. And now move your head a little bit like this, yes? I am an immigrant, being a mom here, so I have my baby here without any help. It was really challenged because the whole weight of the home and the childcare went up on me, and I have already the passion of photography. I study like crazy and I practice like crazy to say, I can do this.
We shape the whole entire program around them. For example, when we talk about success as a woman in business, We don't talk about success for others, we talk about success for them, and ensure that the whole entire programme is shaped around their goals, their ambitions and their values.
My confidence has definitely changed, and I also really loved how it helped us to set out a sort of roadmap to take you from your idea into actually creating the full business.
It's a place also where you can be yourself and be vulnerable. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world. Just do it.
The biggest realisation, perhaps, is that the skills they have gained and honed through motherhood are absolutely the skills that you need to be an entrepreneur or to be a business person.
I definitely think motherhood has helped with running business, because really your own child is your trickiest customer, and if you can nail them, you can nail your business.
This is a marathon, so slow down a little bit and keep going.
So hopefully the audio came through not
That could
too bad there. Let me just tell you a little bit about female entrepreneurship and then give you some kind of startup stories to bring it to life with those people that have been on the program. I think the first thing to talk about is the language that we use. Entrepreneurship, particularly to some of those harder to reach demographics, the word entrepreneurship is already becoming a barrier. They see entrepreneurs as many see them as kind of being dodgy dealers. You know, we have people like Elon Musk, and we have people like Alan Sugar in the UK, Richard Branson, a lot of kind of men, mainly kind of, and often kind of middle-aged men. And I think we need to consider role models, particularly for female entrepreneurs, particularly for young female entrepreneurs, being people like Beyonce and Rihanna, and reframing what we see as an entrepreneur. You know, Rihanna is an incredible entrepreneur, you know, and we see a lot of influencers now making, you know, a lot of money. I did an event recently in Aberdeen with 2 influencers who had gone on to create their own beauty products, who are very successful entrepreneurs in their own right. And so we need to reframe some of the role models that we have, but we also need to consider our language as well. You know, defining someone as a female rather than a male. So we use women because it's softer. And actually the new program of female entrepreneurs, it's actually called Mums in Business, because it is focused on mothers or people with parental responsibility, because they continue to remain, despite some progress, women remain underrepresented among founders in Scotland. Particularly in STEM and rural and creative sectors. But the data is clear, because when women start businesses, they're more likely to reinvest in their families, in their communities, and in their education, because success to them means something different than profit, really. And so at RGU, we've been quite intentional about how we address that. And when we had the opportunity to create a program, we co-designed it with mums. And so through tailored kind of mentoring and peer networks and inclusive cohorts, we're ensuring that the women not only had access to opportunities, but they thrived within them, and they created communities themselves. We created a WhatsApp group with our first couple of cohorts, and it was just pinging constantly, because they created this support network amongst mothers. And so we saw the real importance of that, having visible women founders and leaders who show that entrepreneurship doesn't just look in one particular way. And we created a safe space for them as well to grow and to consider their ideas. And it was run by women. I think that was the other important thing, is I think I was the only male that came in to their domain. And that's because I was speaking to them about presenting with confidence. I have a masterclass that I do around presentation skills on the back of my TED Talk, and they invite me in to talk to them about that. But other than that, it's run by mothers for mothers, really. And so it's about unlocking that untapped potential in women, promoting their confidence and building their confidence, building their peer support network, and inspiring that next generation of women. And the program is curated around them. We don't do it during drop off and pick up time for schools. it's quite all right when we go onto the Zoom platform that their children are there as well. You know, so it's really modeled around their needs and to fit in with the way in which they want to start a business and create a business mainly around their families, you know, and the importance of their families. So that's the way that the program has been curated, and we've been refining that over a number of years. So the key principles of mothers and their lives are designed directly into the architecture of the program. We've had 8 cohorts. We're actually just halfway through our 9th cohort in the islands. And we've had over 90 participants. There were 12 participants on the 9th cohort. It's a 7-week program. It's delivered online. It doesn't run during the school holidays. And that reach, because of the success of the program, that reach has been extended across the rest of Scotland, because 2 other universities in Scotland have taken it into their portfolio of programs. And this is one of the startups that we've had. This is Sarah Holmes, and Sarah Holmes created a business called Pencil Me In, and this is in Elgin, which is about 60 miles outside of Aberdeen, in Moray, and it's a boutique stationery cards gift shop that's opened in 2016 after a previous location in Manchester, and it's known for its pencil bar, which do custom printed pencils, which is quite a unique niche where customers can choose a pencil and then have it personalized texts written on them. And she claims to have over 65,000 personalized pencils in every year. She does wholesale and retail as well. It's an independent high street branch. And it's kind of for anyone that's kind of interested in stationery and the culture of stationery and this kind of boutique retail design-led kind of gifting. It's got a strong example of how a small independent can innovate and grow. Let me move on to creative entrepreneurship. So this is our second focus, and it's something that feels particularly close to RGU's identity, because we do a lot around the creative industries, from digital media, design, performance, storytelling. We do arts and crafts. We have a Grace School of Art, which is the 2nd largest art school in Scotland, which is a great asset for us. But again, I think the word entrepreneurship often turns off that creative talent as well, because they don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. They see themselves as ceramicists or jewelry makers or fine artists or dancers. And so we collaborated with the Grace School of Arts and the Business School to try and bridge that gap. And we creating kind of maker spaces and accelerators and new modules that blend design thinking and commercial skills. And they're learning from us how to monetize their creativity, how to scale it, and how to sustain it. And so it's helping to diversify the economy, particularly in the Northeast, which is moving beyond kind of, as I said, oil and gas. It builds that kind of social resilience, because we're finding that our students are freelancing or going into self-employment careers. We're seeing more and more students now looking at side hustles. And also it's also helping to preserve some of Scotland's cultural identity as well, ensuring that those kind of stories and designs and innovations are kind of shared and come to the forefront. And so the program focuses on the creative industries. It's a 12-week program of workshops. They get access to co-working space and maker space and dedicated studio space. And again, they create a nice cohort. They create that kind of peer support with one another. And at the end, we have a dedicated showcase. And this picture is actually from a showcase that we did in the city centre, where we bring the creatives together and we get them to showcase the art and the way in which they're developing their creative practice. And so a great example of that is Aberdeen Ceramic Studio. And one of the great things about Aberdeen Ceramic Studio was that they were students and staff. So this is AJ, Kevin, Kelda, Amy, 2 Amy's, Amy with an E and Amy with a Y, and Matthew. And they came together as a collective, and they wanted to create a studio for ceramicists in Aberdeen. And it's an open access clay studio based in Torry in Aberdeen. And Torry is quite a deprived area in Aberdeen, but it provides space and equipment and classes and memberships for makers across all levels. So from beginners to hobbyists, emerging professionals, and it brings community members together through classes and studio access as well. So they do wheel throwing, they do hand building as well. They have membership access that's available, so they can use the studio between Tuesdays and Sundays from 10 till 6, and they get access to kilns and to workspace and equipment and tools. And it was great because the studio was founded by a group connected with Grace School of Arts, but there were staff and alumni from the school that recognized that there was a real lack of access to equipment and studio space in the city, and that led them to create Aberdeen Ceramic Studio, and we supported them at RGU through that. And then finally, moving on to food and drink, and latterly we added tourism to that as well, because this connects entrepreneurship to place, so the northeast of Scotland, but also to heritage as well. We have a number of different kind of trails, and we have the beaches, and we have the castles as well. And Scotland's food and drink and tourism sectors are powerful engines for local economies. And recently we've been working with Orkney, Shetland and the Highlands, so across the Highlands of Scotland, because that's a kind of a part of the Scottish landscape, the Scottish produce and the Scottish people as well. And so we created, with some funding from, as we were coming out of COVID, the Scottish government provided some funding to help get economies back on their feet. And they approached us and said, because of our success in entrepreneurship, they approached us and said, would you mind running a food and drink entrepreneurship program as part of your portfolio? And we said that we'd be delighted to, because there was nothing like it at all in the region. There were lots of accelerators, lots of startup programs, but nothing specifically around food and drink. And me coming from a food and drink background, I was very supportive of that as well. And so we were supporting kind of locally rooted enterprises, from artisan food producers to, sustainable food producers to, donut companies and caterers and food manufacturers. And we were combining kind of the research of supply chains and place branding with that hands-on business support. And what we wanted to do there was we wanted the founders to tell their authentic local stories, to create products that then had the opportunity to reach global markets. Because the work in this area supports communities, creates jobs, keeps young people connected to the region through food and drink and tourism, to help strengthen their economic vitality and that community as well. So this was an 8-week online kind of practical workshop. We focused on building resilient businesses, food and drink businesses across the region. And the first one that we ever did was on Zoom, because we were just kind of coming out of COVID, and because Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire and Moray is such a dispersed region, it's very difficult to get everybody at the same place at the same time. And of course, the other way that we develop our programs is a number of our students and staff and people that want to start businesses are often working full-time or studying full-time. So many of these programs run in the evenings, and often on Zoom. We do try and get people in the room together as much as possible, but sometimes that's not practical. So we run a number of these programs on Zoom, and it's very practical based. We want them doing stuff. We don't want to be lecturing to them for 2 hours. This is not an academic exercise. That's the business school do that. This is a very practical exercise. So we get them in teams, we get them working on their value proposition, we get them working on their business model canvas, we get them to do that customer discovery. So the first few weeks is really to a deep dive into really understand who your customer is and what value you're creating for that customer, and then get them to validate the customer before we go into the product and what it is and the financials around that and the marketing around that. Let me show you a quick startup story. This is a video. Sorry, that was a little video that we made for social media for people to apply. But this is by a platter. This was created by Ashley Forbes, who came on our last food drink entrepreneurship program. And And she describes By Platter as a small family-run company located on the Aberdeenshire coast, but they specialize in luxury platters and grazing tables and grazing boxes for occasions, whether they're kind of intimate home gatherings or weddings or corporate events or corporate workshops. And they choose food from a seasonal menu. They select the kind of styling or the theme. They provide styling accessories and work very closely with clients. So you can choose floral or foliage elements from their in-house florist. So they have an in-house florist to do that. They deliver the full setup at the venue. So they deliver ahead of time to set up the displays and everything like that. They're also very sustainable. They provide kind of plant-based compostable plates and utensils. They cater for different dietary requirements as well, whether it's vegan or halal or gluten-free. And they focus on the exceptional presentation of locally sourced food, and they collaborate in projects as well in these kind of grazing tables. But yeah, if you want to go and have a look, they've got a website. You can go and have a look at the incredible food that they do, these kind of grazing platters, we call them. So they've gone on to great success across Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, and run by a successful female entrepreneur. So there's kind of a little bit of an insight into the 3 programs that we've been kind of working on and developing and co-designing and evolving over the past sort of 5 or 6 years that have got some real success. And we've run a number of cohorts, and we continue to get funding from government as well as funding from the university and local government. So Aberdeenshire Council and Aberdeen City Council have been funding these programs to support that economic diversity and support many of those entrepreneurs who are kind of at the edges of mainstream entrepreneurship. And often that's because they don't see themselves as entrepreneurs, or there aren't programs to support them and the work that they're doing and the ideas that they have. So bringing it all together, I think you might notice something that connects all these 3 areas, that it's not just about starting a business. It's very much about building communities that are inclusive, that are creative, that are sustainable. And our vision is to make entrepreneurship accessible, particularly to those that aren't as visible, or maybe have barriers to come into entrepreneurship. It's very place-based around the northeast of Scotland, but it's also purpose-driven as well, because entrepreneurship is an act of belonging, and the way we strengthen that identity, that resilience, that pride of place across northeast Scotland. So when we talk about kind of female founders or women in business or mothers or creative makers or local food producers, what we're really talking about is kind of people beginning to shape Scotland's future. So to close again, I'd really like to thank you all for taking the time this afternoon to come and listen to what I have to say. It's not just a program or a pipeline. It's a kind of mindset that we're kind of trying to cultivate in everything that we're doing. And we're investing our time and our commitment and our money across kind of female creative food, drink and tourism. And we're investing to create that more kind of equitable, more imaginative, more kind of connected, because for us, kind of entrepreneurship isn't just about creating businesses. It's about creating a sense of belonging, a sense of creativity, and a sense of change. And yeah, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed presenting. I'll stop sharing, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a very sort of concise, to the point presentation, and I feel like I especially was learning so much. I was constantly taking notes as we were going. So if anyone has questions, please raise your hands and Majibeen can sort of unmute you. But while you guys are thinking of questions, I do have a couple. So I'm going to sort of take the liberty and actually, why don't we have Azim Saab go first?
Okay.
You can go at the end. Yes.
Hi, Azim.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sabha, and it was a very interesting presentation, and it was a very insightful, you can say. My question is, you have 7 weeks of workshop and 12 weeks of workshop and 8 weeks of workshop for various segments of, your target audience. But I'm interested in knowing the modules. What particular workshop
Yes.
you can cover, like for food and drink and for creative industry?
Yeah. So what we try to do there is we have a core module which is about startup, and we do that around the business model canvas. So the strategize a business model canvas, and we break that down into mainly 3 parts. So we do a week around, or 2 weeks actually, around desirability. So this is really about understanding your value proposition. It's about the customer. And so we talk about your customer segments, your customer relationships, the channels that you use, but really get them to understand what the customer is. So we use a lot of kind of empathy and customer journey mapping for them to understand who the customer is and what value they're creating. So we use the value proposition canvas to do that, so they really understand that. And then we kind of say to them, go and speak to your potential customers and validate that. So the first few weeks are really around a deep dive into understanding your customer and the customer journey and the customer problem. Then we go to the feasibility side. So this is really around, now you understand what the customer wants, how do you deliver that? And that's really around the other part of the business model canvas, which is around about the activities that you're going to do, the resources that you need, the partners that you need to get to deliver that value to them. And then the final week is really, or the final few weeks actually, is looking at the cost and revenue. So then we look about the commercial viability of what it is that you're offering. And then we do some stuff around presentation skills and confidence and networking in the last few weeks. So that's the core program that we deliver pretty much across all these 3 programs. But where the nuances come in is when we start to tailor it specifically to that audience. And so we do that by in a number of ways. We do that by using case studies. We do that by bringing in guest speakers, so that we give it a flavor of food and drink entrepreneurship. So when we're talking about customers, or when we're talking about business models or pricing, we then begin to tailor it around the food and drink sector, for example. So we bring in someone from the food and drink sector and we ask them, how did you go about pricing your product? Or how did you go about negotiating the lease agreement on your restaurant? So that's where we really begin to have the nuance from it. And so, yeah, we kind of had this core program, and then we have these different kind of areas that we have, which really shape it and curate it in a way that's meaningful to the food and drink audience, or to the creative sector. And recently we've had somebody join us to deliver the creative entrepreneurship program who is a creative entrepreneur. And that's the other thing that you find when you kind of go around doing kind of, so we're on cohort sort of 7 and 8. What you often find is that you can invite all those people that were on cohort 1 and 2, come back and tell us about your experience and share that lived experience with you in a way. So that's how we do it. I hope that answers your question. We have a core program, and then we supplement that with very much sector focused activity and case studies and speakers to bring it to life. Yeah. Thank you, Azim.
There is a question by Samin.
Hi, Samin. There she is. Hi, Samin.
You have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry,
Yes.
It took me a while to set this up. Thank you, Chris. This was a really interesting session. I really enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you very much.
So I think my question is from the marketing perspective, because
Yes.
I work in marketing. So I think my question was more around outreach. Like, how
Yes.
did you guys initially manage to reach the communities you were designing these programs for?
That's a great question, because that's not easy. That isn't easy, actually. We had a whole suite of ways of doing it, and some of it didn't work. You know, I'm going to be honest with you, some of it didn't work, but get into these populations. So let me give you an example of one of the things, particularly with the food and drink entrepreneurship one. Actually, we ended up mail shotting. Now that's something that we don't do a lot of, but we ended up creating postcards and mail shot. So we got a list of really early stage entrepreneurs that we knew were out in the region, and we mail shot them with very simple postcards. Are you thinking of starting a food and drink business, basically? And that actually brought some success because it was something that was quite new. The other way that we've done it is, I don't know how it's set up in Lahore, but we have a lot of agencies. So the government fund a program called Business Gateway, and we also have Scottish Enterprise. So there's a number of local agencies, Chamber of Commerce, if you like. And so we pull on our networks as well. With the mothers, we approach schools. So we went and we spoke to a number of high schools and primary schools across the region, and we asked them if they wouldn't mind putting something in their newsletters or their social media to say that we were starting up this. Libraries was another one, because we knew that mothers took their children to libraries, and so the children area where the books are. So we really need to think outside the box at how to get to these. So we pulled on our networks, we pulled on our kind of the council and agencies that we're working with. We went to the job centres, so there's a lot of employability where people will go and look for jobs. But again, a lot of these people haven't thought about self-employment as a way of doing that. And as we started to do that, Samin, we found that people started coming to us, and we created that way, created videos and told stories. I think storytelling is a really powerful way of attracting people. So we told the stories of female founders, and we told stories of food and drink entrepreneurs as well. So those are some of the areas. We did a range of things, and as I say, some of them didn't work, and some of them were very, very successful, actually. And I guess, yeah, kind of create a brand. And as I said in the presentation, language is very important. Language is very important. So when we first did the female entrepreneurship program, we called it female entrepreneurship, and that just turned off the demographic that we were looking for, because they didn't recognize themselves as and actually the word female can also be quite divisive as well, you know. So we called it women. And then actually the latest cohort that we've delivered across the islands, we've actually changed that to mums in business. Because again, the people that were developing that program went and spoke to female entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, or women that wanted to start businesses, and they didn't feel that women recognized what they were, and they wanted to change it. So a lot of our own customer discovery, a lot of co-design, and again, you know, we didn't get it right in the first instance, and we had to kind of evolve it and change it. But I think now we have a real program, and yeah, that it's now called Mums in Business. And so learning, you know, the language that we use is really important in that kind of marketing aspect of it. And don't I guess in the early days we kind of assumed with the language we were using that it was going to, and we got some of that wrong. And so it's not until you actually go and, you know, talk to the potential customers and understand what language we need to use that is going to make them click on an apply now button, you know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. This was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. Samin.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, then I will ask the questions I have.
Yes. Sama.
I have two questions. First, Chris, I was, while you were presenting, I was thinking of when you're sort of doing your outreach and inducting people into your programs, how are you even defining what a startup is? Because I feel in our ecosystem, we're looking at setting up business incubation centers, and we sort of look at it in a very serious way. Like you have to be a startup sort of founder. And I think even the term startup, you're talking about language, can scare people. You know, I'm not tech enabled. Maybe I'm not scaling at the speed at which a startup would. So, and then sort of these businesses can also be looked at traditional businesses. So for your programs, are you distinguishing between a startup and a traditional business? Or are you, I mean, how are you defining the kind of ideas you take on?
That's such a great question.
That's my first question.
Yeah.
I'll also tell you my second question and you can answer. The second one was for the creative industry.
Yeah.
So for instance, when you're supporting people like, people who need access to a ceramic kiln or, very capital intensive equipment, how do you manage to sort of acquire those resources or maybe access funding for these kind of, because not each incubator could maybe perhaps.
No, that's right. So let me take the first question first, because it's a great question. It is a great question. And I really identify with it as well, actually, because over the past 10 years, Scotland has really been focusing on, and I think a lot of regions are focusing on high growth, high growth hockey stick, companies that are going to turn over 5 million in 5 years. And that's been really acute in the past few years because everyone's looking for unicorns. Scotland want the next unicorn, and we're looking at countries like Sweden and Finland that have 2 or 3, 4 unicorns a year, and Scotland has kind of 1 in the past or 2 in the past 5 years. So Brewdog is a unicorn that's come out of Scotland. Skyscanner is another one, and so we're all kind of been looking for that and putting money into that. And over in MIT they call it innovation driven enterprises. So these are your hockey stick enterprises. But more recently there's been a lot of talk in Scotland about inclusive entrepreneurship, and that is focusing on the entrepreneurship that is almost kind of hidden. It's place based, it's purpose driven, it's accessible. So there's a lot more focus on that. And so in terms of definition, we are very early. So we operate in the very early stages. And at the early stages of entrepreneurship, it's very difficult to tell whether the idea is a good one or a bad one, And one of the problems that we see in entrepreneurship and startups is we are measured by the metrics of incorporation. When a company sets up or when a company makes a first sale, when a company, so here you set up with Companies House, you form a limited company. You might not be trading, but that would be a tick for us. We would class that as one of our KPIs. Or you might register as self-employment with HMRC. However, what we're not recognizing is the lots of people who had an idea and went through the process and decided that idea wasn't, they're still an entrepreneur, but that idea there wasn't a market for it. And they might spend 6 months doing that. And we're not counting them, or we're not counting the ones that kind of, set up and within 6 months, a year have failed, and there's a reason why they failed. Maybe the market's changed or something like that. And so failure is still quite a bad word in Scotland. Whereas I think in places like America, failure is kind of encouraged almost, because it's going to be the 3rd or 4th, 5th, because you learn from that, fail fast kind of attitude. And so I think going through the journey of entrepreneurship and building that community and having a go, starting something, the learning that you take from that. And if you find out within 6 months that there isn't a market for it, then for me, that's a positive, because you're not going to waste any more time, money, resource. And what we often find is when people come in with an idea into our program, they pivot quite quickly because they have a technology or an idea, and it's idea technology push rather than customer pull. And so when they've then gone out and done their customer discovery in their first few months, they actually find out what I thought the customer want, they don't want. But I do now understand what the customer wants, and I will curate and develop my product or service to meet the needs of that customer. And then I can have a successful business. So I think the answer to your question, Sabra, is that it's very early stage. It's almost kind of at that idea stage. And whether it becomes a startup, we will find out in the next six months, because we don't know, because it's so difficult to tell at that such early stage, where it's so difficult to distinguish between a good idea and a bad idea, or an idea that's going to be successful and an idea that's not going to be successful. And so for our programs, particularly these 3 programs, if you start up, that's great. But if you don't, maybe that's also great, because you haven't wasted a lot of time, resource and money and time away from your family and stuff like that, because you have to commit when you start in a business. it's a huge commitment. It's a huge kind of, and you invest your whole self into it to make it a success. I've done it twice, and it's, you know, it's the greatest thing, but it's the toughest thing as well. And so, yeah, when we talk about startups, having said all of that, we run an accelerator program that I talked about, just closed. We've had 130 applications. We do expect people to start a business from that. They will each get £3,000. They will each get a 6-month program. And so in our accelerator program, in the terms and conditions, we expect the founder within 12 months to be full-time in that startup. So the accelerator program is slightly different. That is a startup program. And, you know, we are looking for people to start up. So they are slightly further on in their ideation. They have done some diligence around there. They've validated some of their activity, but there is an expectation that they will start a business. With creative industries, with women in business, with food and drink entrepreneurship, we would like them to, but there's not an expectation that they're all going to start businesses. This is more about the journey and the process than the final destination, if I'm honest. In relation to your second question, again, another great question. We beg, borrow, and steal, I think, would be the answer to that. We do provide a small amount of funding. So we usually try and give our entrepreneurs in creative industries and women in business around about £300. It's not a lot of money compared to the accelerator, but it's really, again, just to help them with their customer discovery, to access some expertise, or to go on to a conference, or, you know, play for some journey, but also certainly for mothers in business. And again, this is something that you might want to consider. It's also a small amount of money to help with childcare. So if they do need to go somewhere, or they do need to attend an event, or they're finding it really difficult to participate in the program because of their child commitments, it just helps lighten the load by giving them a small stipend that they can then use for a childminder for a couple of hours as well. So it kind of frees them up. So we do have some money available for that. It probably wouldn't buy them a kiln. It might help to buy them a kiln. It might support them with that. They're also, we connect them with other funding sources. So Scottish Enterprise, Business Gateway, they usually have about £1,000 startup grant. It might be increased if they're people that are in certain regions, certain deprived areas. They can access £1,000. So we also have a great way of introducing them to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we'll often bring people from Business Gateway or the local councils into our programs and say, meet the cohort, tell them about the funding that you have available. And then we kind of let the entrepreneurs go and make those connections and fill in those applications to get that kind of money. And there is money around for capital equipment and things like that, so they can access that. We have a small amount of money we can give them, but it's mainly through kind of introductions, and yeah, kind of creating that network for them. We now have probably about 100 participants that have gone through the Women in Business program, probably about similar number, 120 through creative entrepreneurship. So we can connect them with other creative entrepreneurs that might have access to equipment that they can, you know, because they're such a tight, close community in Scotland. I mean, Scotland only has 5 million, nearly 6 million people in it. So it's quite Aberdeen has around about 250,000 people in it. They call Aberdeen a village because everybody knows everybody. And so you often kind of know someone or have some connection on LinkedIn that you can go and speak to about accessing camera equipment, for example, or video equipment or recording equipment. And the university has some equipment as well that we can lend or rent out. So we have, you know, the schools, the Grace School of Art has a number of different pieces of equipment, as does the business school through their courses. We have labs as well. So if people kind of want that kind of equipment, then we can certainly get access to that through our university community.
Thank you for that. I think there is a question from Azim Saab.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a question about the sustainability model of your. How are you sustaining your entrepreneurship center?
Yes. So when we created the Entrepreneurship and Innovation group at Robert Gordon University, we had some philanthropic funding. So we got 1.2 million from an organization called the Wood Foundation. Now, many of you may have heard of the oil and gas company Wood, run by Sir Ian Wood, who is a great philanthropist in Aberdeen. And he has created a foundation called the Wood Foundation. And the Wood Foundation provided money to both universities. So there's another university in Aberdeen called Aberdeen University, and they gave some money to them and some money to us. And we had 1.6 million pounds. And that lasted for 3 years. And we ran programs and we employed the team. And it was like our own little startup, actually. It was a fantastic place to work in. And then when that money ran out, the university had to kind of make a decision as to whether the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group ceases or they invest in it. And because of the success that we had, and because RGU is becoming recognized in Scotland as being a very strong leader in entrepreneurial education and entrepreneurial practice, the university invested in keeping the people in place and keeping the programs going. And because the university then invested in us, we then didn't have to go out and find money. We weren't constantly going out to find more philanthropic money or funding. And what we found was money came to us. So we were then being approached by the councils and by Scottish government saying, look, would you run our programs for us? And so we were very successful actually in getting a number of programs. Then COVID hit, and we started running programs online. And as we came out of COVID, more money came into the area to help get businesses and create businesses and get them back on their feet. And really a number of the programs that I've spoken about today, the catalyst for that was coming out of COVID. They wanted to get more people involved in starting businesses and creating that economic growth. And so we actually found it very easy to come for money to support these programs. So a lot of them are externally funded, which has been great. And when the external funding isn't available, then the university will step in. They fund the team. We're all paid through the university, and we will deliver the programs. And recently, we have been asked by Scottish Government to run these programs across the islands. So you might know that north of Scotland has Highlands and Islands, and places like Shetland, Orkney, the Western Isles, beautiful, beautiful islands just off the coast of the north of Scotland. And the Scottish Government have seen the success that we've had across the northeast of Scotland and said, will you now go and deliver these programs in the islands? And at the moment, we are running the Women in Business program and the Creative Entrepreneurship program and the Accelerator across those 3 island communities. And that's being paid for by Scottish Government. So that's kind of how we've managed the sustainability of it. And I think the other thing that we've done is we listen constantly to the customers. We evolve these programs to meet their needs. So, for example, I get an example of that was we were doing food and drink entrepreneurship, and we were approached by a number of people that were in tourism, and they said, look, we heard about your food drink entrepreneurship program. We think that tourism is a key part of the cultural heritage of Scotland around food and drink entrepreneurship. Would you mind including tourism as part of that program? So the last program that we won was actually called Food, Drink and Tourism Entrepreneurship as well. And we had two kind of strains of that. We had one which was around food and drink entrepreneurship, and then one which was around tourism entrepreneurship. And it had the core program running through it. So we're constantly evolving, constantly learning and speaking to the customer. And I think that really helps the sustainability of it. It's co-designed, it's co-delivered, and that really helps the sustainability of these programs so that they're constantly evolving and constantly meeting the needs of the communities that we're trying to represent.
I think it was a very comprehensive presentation. Maybe that's why people don't have too many questions. And thank you so much. So thank you so much, Chris, for your time. We understand it's super early for you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you all for attending and having those questions and listening intently. And I hope that 2 things that I hope. One is that I hope that I can come and meet you all in person, I think there is much that we can learn from you and your incubators as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. I know some of my colleagues have been over, but I'd love to come over myself. And then, you know, I'd like to invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. And Saba, as I said, it'd be wonderful if you and your team could reciprocate so that I can bring my community together and we can learn from you and your community in the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. I feel like there's the Pakistani story is definitely one to tell. And there are areas of our work here and colleagues here from other incubators that we'd be very happy to share. And
Wonderful.
I think this is one of our first sort of engagements. We hope to kind of continue working with RGU. And a lot of our participants here today are from, you know, projects that we've done in the past and other BIC representatives. So the idea is always to sort of have this community of entrepreneurial enablers that can learn from each other, engage with each other. So if anyone does have questions in the future for Chris, for LCE, we'll be happy to sort of pass them on to him. As he mentioned, you're welcome to connect with him on LinkedIn as well. But we will let you go because I think we've taken quite a bit of your time. And it's very early in the day in Scotland. So thank you, Chris, for your time. And thank you for everyone who joined.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Have a good day.